out of any Easter egg you have ever pointed out, that is going to make the top 10 that will forever stay in my memory right there. How's it going, Reject Nation? I am so excited to watch this today. New Rockstars, episode 8 of What If Ultron won? You know it's going to be a good one after that amazing episode. I want to thank everyone who commented repetitively in regards to our initial response to when Ultron killed Thanos. I appreciate that, especially after we pretty much addressed all those exact points towards the end of the review, but I know most of you guys don't make it that far.
So, maybe next time, I don't know, stick around.
We might bring up the counter argument already.
It's just not the time to unpack it when the show is midway.
To New Rockstars, I'm Eric Voss, and this is a breakdown of Marvel's What If Episode 8, What If Ultron Won? A truly terrifying age of Ultron that even the Watcher and his fighting PJs can't stop. This episode was filled with interesting Easter eggs and MCU implications, so I'm going to break it down frame by frame for everything you might have missed. We open on the Watcher, his outline framed in the snow of post-apocalyptic Moscow. Unlike past appearances, his silhouette has retreated behind the elements of our atmosphere, reflecting how powerless he now seems this episode. With the falling
scared of
snow
Russia.
like pieces of himself as he risks dematerializing into obsolescence. He laments,
"We've seen this before, a universe in the final days of destruction. But this particular story, this one breaks my heart."
I'm curious about the exact timing of the Watcher's narration. By "we've seen this before," he seems to be referring to past apocalyptic episodes he's shown us, like the Doctor Strange and the Zombies episodes, but it's not clear if this Watcher was the one who reacted to Ultron's arrival to Party Thor in episode 7. So is the story that breaks his heart the story of Ultron's destruction of Earth that we're about to see, and he's now speaking to us right before the moment Ultron sensed him? Or are we seeing a truly defeated Watcher speaking to us as a ghost beyond his cosmic grave, and his heartbreak is really coming from the story of what Ultron is about to do to the multiverse in the second half of this two-part finale event?
That's actually a really great question, because he does show up at the end. Ultron shows up at the end of the Party Thor episode, and he's like, "What?"
And then it starts off this one, and he's just like, "I'm telling another story."
Yeah.
And I'm surprised again when Ultron senses me.
Yeah, because I think the initial assumption is that this episode is set before the events of Party Thor, which would explain how Ultron got over there, but then that doesn't line up with the Watcher's narration at the end of Party Thor and how this ultimately progresses and where it lands by the end of it. And I didn't think about the possibility of be like multiple, like the two different Watchers. I thought they'd be the same.
Is there a multiverse of the veil between the multiverse?
No, that's not what the rules establish, at least.
No.
I don't know. Let's hear some more.
I have some thoughts on this later, but here Natasha Romanoff roars past on a motorcycle, her taillight bleeding a streak of red like blood in the water, luring some predators, in this case Ultron Sentries. Meanwhile, Clint Barton's arm was replaced with one from an Ultron Sentry, showing how in this machine-dominated post-apocalyptic world, he must supplant his flesh with pieces of that which he hates. But it's worth noting that this is now the arm in hand that Clint uses
Such a
to
way with
release
words,
his
Eric.
arrows, so he does benefit from the technological precision of those robotic motor functions. Clint's cloak is made from the same mesh fabric that Natasha and Melina and Sharon Carter have used for cloaking purposes. Clint does rely mostly on his Sentry arm to do the heavy lifting, but as he fires a hole through one of their heads, notice how the camera frames his human hand through the kill hole, a way of showing triumph of man over machine. And Natasha
that's beautiful.
detail. He'd need a hand, claiming puns aren't her style. Yet, notice the next line.
Puns aren't really my style. We're getting rusty.
Getting rusty. As in Clint's mechanical
Get
arm
right in
collecting
there.
rust. Yeah, she loves puns. Then the Watcher rewinds a clock to Tony's
I
envision
love much
of
she loves
Ultron.
posing.
I see a suit of armor around the world.
A direct quote from Age of Ultron.
I see a suit of armor around the world.
Back then, Tony designed Ultron to operate his Iron Legion, an idea he pitched to Bruce Banner, and I love how in that conversation it inspired this what-if hypothetical, given the little exchange between them in that moment.
That's a mad-sized if. Our job is if.
Ultron goes online.
Hey,
and in
that's
this
cool.
moment, he's weirdly already in his later form, not the disembodied AI he was born as in the film.
Right,
and then
right.
shortly after, the broken Iron Legion drone, actually that was the same one that the Sokovian protester defaced in the opening scene of the movie. But then this Ultron cross dissolves into the body that would later become Vision, resting in the cradle in Helen Cho's South Korean facility. This transition neatly shows how Ultron successfully merges with the Vision body this time, instead of Helen Cho pausing the upload at 42% in the film. And notice how when he opens his eyes, they glow Ultron red, the color that shows his consciousness in any given Sentry drone, contrasting Vision's blue eyes. But remember, Helen Cho was only able to stop that upload when Wanda Maximoff dispelled her from the Mind Stone's mind control. It's just worth noting how many of these Nexus moments really come down to the decisions of Wanda Maximoff or Stephen Strange, who will be the pivotal characters in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness.
I'm surprised we haven't got any what if episodes with like Wanda yet.
I know, except for the zombies one pretty much, right?
We've gotten so much like Vision, and then we've gotten even a Doctor Strange, and yeah, we're dealing with multiverse events. I feel like we would have got at least like one Wanda by this point.
Maybe they just want to make us miss her for a little while until Doctor Strange 2 comes out.
And speaking of Nexus, the Avengers' defeat by Ultron goes down in the Nexus Internet Hub in Oslo, Norway, seen briefly in Age of Ultron when Tony Stark tried to track Ultron's movement through the internet.
And is this just the center of everything? I'm just a guy looking for a needle in the world's biggest haystack. Oh, I'm decrypting nuclear codes and you don't want me to.
Aha, so Ultron ascends on his path toward becoming a Nexus being at the Nexus Internet Hub. Now, theoretically, Ultron's assimilation would have occurred right as Tony made that crack about the nuclear codes, which could have actually led Ultron to this place to initiate global nuclear annihilation, which is way more fun to wipe out the human race than throwing a chunk of a city back at the surface.
You don't have to do this. I made you for peace.
It's evolution. Only a primitive mind would fail to see the distinction, which is why you have to die.
Now, replacing James Spader as Ultron this episode is Ross Marquand, the voice of Red Skull.
Yeah, I've heard some people say that Ross Marquand wasn't even going for a James Spader, that he was doing his own voice. I feel like he was going for a James Spader.
At least somewhat of a James Spader, because he's got his James Spader drawl.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Completely disagree with people who have that assessment. I feel like it's very intentional. The voice he did was supposed to make you think, is that James Spader?
Now notice the visual of Cap's shield broken in half and his body strewn alongside those of Thor and Hulk, as Stark is just left to watch it all. This is exactly Tony's nightmare vision first into his mind by Wanda Maximoff.
Yes, good call.
And this episode makes it the fourth one to kill off Tony Stark, really the only Avenger to die on screen in every repeat appearance on the series. It's almost as if this guy needs to die for the multiverse to move forward. I actually have a video coming out in a few days exploring how Stark's death may actually be an absolute point.
I think it absolutely is, especially with the way how it's affected the whole of the MCU and where we're at now. Definitely seems like an absolute point. He does die in all the What If episodes, and I do wish, because that point that he just brought up about how this is the fulfillment of the nightmare that he has at the beginning of Age of Ultron that he doesn't really bring back until later on in the MCU franchise, I think that would have just made this episode hit that much harder, and especially that moment too. If we didn't just kind of brush past it really quick, it would have made it hit that much harder. If these episodes were just like a few minutes longer, we could have really seen this is the fear of the debate that Bruce Banner and Iron Man had with each other over creating this. And of course, it would have made that nightmare feel much more complementary and complete to this whole what if scenario.
It would have been such a striking moment if they had really taken advantage of it.
Now, during the sequence, the Watcher's hand swipes over the frame, transitioning it with this kaleidoscopy texture from the main MCU reality to this alternate one. These what did happen slides have always had a storybook aesthetic in past episodes, and now we see why. Because to the Watcher, he is flipping through the pages of what's essentially a comic book that he's already read, and in his case, peering from one crystalline window
my comics
into
collection.
another. Thaddeus Ross watches in horror as ICBMs strike all over the world. Notice how one ICBM from the Texas region, if you follow its trajectory, is headed right for Wakanda, which Ultron must recognize as a global superpower alongside the US and Russia and China. Thanos portals into
Voss.
Just as he arrived in Infinity War. Now, he already possesses the power, space, reality, soul, and time stones, meaning he must have begun his stone quest earlier in this universe. Perhaps Ultron killing Thor
Stone quest.
and or the Ancient One in the nuclear blasts could have cleared a path for Thanos to go to Xandar for the Power Stone, to Asgard for the Space Stone, and so on. However, Gamora is still alive on the Sovereign, so he could not have sacrificed her on Vormir to get the Soul Stone. Now, Gamora could have sacrificed Nebula to get the Soul Stone, but would she have parted ways with it without giving her life? See, folks, when it comes to the Infinity Stones, this show doesn't really consider their exact continuity that big a priority, it turns out. So we are best chalking it all up
Anything's
to...
possible.
In other universes, the stones are wherever they need to be for the story.
That's 100% true. I've seen so many debates, and I'm wondering if Voss is really going to go into it here. But like, I thought they couldn't work if they were not
in their own universe of origin,
which I'm sure he'll go into after Ultron takes the stones. What I thought that this show might attempt to do with this specific storyline was address Thanos watching over Ultron, because they have that post-credit scene where he grabs the glove and go, fine, I'll do it myself. And so that's an indicator that he was hoping at least the way
would play a part in this whole thing,
in grabbing the Infinity Stones, or was that just some post-credit scene they threw into the MCU? I thought they might do something there once I saw where this episode was going, but apparently not.
No, and I mean, that's been another theme, is like, as much as we've seen Tony die, I feel like we've also seen Thanos show up and just, be a joke.
Ultron uses the Mind Stone to slice Thanos in half on Avengers Tower. What the hell? Well, I suppose if you consider that Thanos could have been clouded by his Malthusian ambitions, and by comparison, Ultron, as a super efficient robot brain, could have quickly mastered his stone's fullest potential to get the draw on this eco-terrorist who's still figuring out how his toys work exactly. But yeah, it is nuts to see Ultron wield the Mind Stone so perfectly to fillet Thanos and melt a Nidavellir gauntlet.
At least we know how Voss feels about it.
Thoroughly on team. It's hilarious to watch Thanos go out like a punk. That's got to be like the most hotly debated aspect of that comment section.
Yeah, I mean, I also don't agree with that assessment too. People were like, Vision treasures life, he values life, that's why I want to kill Thanos. So I'm like, but in an exact movie you're saying that? All right, so I could get on board with maybe he couldn't use the Mind Stone because it was loose after Shuri was doing work on trying to remove it, and I could even get on board with he was weak, so maybe he couldn't use it. Fine. But you can't say he wouldn't kill, because he kills someone like minutes before he dies in Infinity War.
And this is like that ultimate moment of like, well, given the extremity of what this person's about to do, Thor's gonna try it, I might as well give every weapon I have a chance. Or, I mean, if he had that ability, he could have even sawed off his arm.
I also don't agree with the point where people are like, he doesn't just mercilessly kill. Okay, yeah, if Thanos just showed up, he wouldn't just kill him. But after the invasion of Wakanda, being forewarned about Thanos, having the Black Order attack, there's enough precedent set in place where Vision could kill him on sight if he had the capability to use the laser, all right?
And so Ultron plugs in the 5 remaining stones into his new armor.
Wow. There are worlds that need me.
Yeah, notice how the stones emit that heavy tone. The same sound that we heard Thanos' gauntlet would make in Infinity War when emitting stone energy. Ultron materializes an army of Sentries using the Reality Stone, but also they come together in this black ink dot effect. Now, in comics, this is known as the Kirby Crackle, or the Kirby dots, created by artist Jack Kirby, who would use similar dots to convey cosmic negative space around energy. These Kirby dots return around most of Ultron and the Watcher's attacks later in this episode, and it elevates Ultron to a Jack Kirby cosmic level character like Galactus. And I love when the show uses ink in this way, like how they showed Doctor Strange's universe melt back into comic book style ink, the base elements that form all of these characters. Ultron first destroys Asgard. I think the imagery looks a lot like when those alien battleships strike skyscrapers in Independence Day.
Yeah, that's a good call.
But if you go through frame by frame as Asgard explodes, notice the water pouring down from the edges of the disc vaporize before the whole plane obliterates, just like it did when Surtur destroyed it in Thor Ragnarok. Then onto the Sovereign, which you remember from Guardians Volume 2, and we see Peter Quill and Gamora and Drax fighting on that same platform that they fought the Obelisk. And since this is in 2015, this is a place they already would have been to, because Guardians Volume 2 takes place a month after Guardians Volume 1. Then we go on to Sakaar, where Sentries pour into the Grandmaster's arena. You can see Korg fighting alongside that strainer-headed gladiator from Thor Ragnarok, who also cameoed in last week's Party Thor episode. Grandmaster dies in the blast as well. And then Ego gets hit, looking just as he did in Guardians Volume 2. The craters on the surface make his face in a shocked expression, with his mouth gaping open as lightning. Oh no, I haven't had a chance to bang the other half of the universe yet. And then on to Xandar, which of course he saw in the first Guardians. During the Sentry attack, the Nova Corps tower does appear to be under reconstruction. Not just wreckage that Ultron has just caused, but apparently some attempts to rebuild from some past conflict. I thought it was just from Ronan's assault in the first Guardians film, but at the end of that movie, it was not this much under repair.
Yeah.
So we might be looking at the aftermath of Thanos' recent attack to steal the Power Stone. It would justify how he got that stone, at least. Captain Marvel.
God, you are the best at this, Eric.
I've seen the Killer Robot movie, and I gotta say, I really don't think it needs a sequel.
Terminator. Skynet, referring to the robotic AI computer network that nukes the planet in the Terminator franchise. But this line about the sequel, well, we know Carol got abducted in 1989 and returned to Earth briefly in 1995, and seemed to jet off with the Skrulls. She did land in a blockbuster, but I don't think she had enough time to know that a sequel to the 1984 Terminator, the amazing T2 Judgment Day of 1991, was a way better film. So this killer robot movie that she was referring to totally needed its sequel, and her wrongness on this point, in my opinion, makes her deserve to lose to Ultron.
Yes, that's probably out of any Easter egg you have ever pointed out. That is gonna make the top 10 that will forever stay in my memory right there. Oh God, that was so brilliant. Once he said 89, it was like, oh, she never saw it.
Next she's gonna say Alien didn't need aliens.
Oh, so good, so good. Matrix and T2 are pretty much done. It's my favorite movies of all time. I especially appreciate that.
Ultron was just about to call it quits.
Is done. At last.
The realization nearly broke the machine.
You should have kept your mouth shut.
Shut up, Uatu! The Watcher monologuing here did amount to intervention, because had he said nothing, Ultron may have self-destructed or retired and never thought to move on to the other universes. So the Watcher's already kind of intervened. He's gonna have to intervene to undo his intervention. Even after Ultron senses him behind his back, the way Doctor Strange did in episode 4, the Watcher continues.
Who said that?
Basking in the boundless silence of his universe, Ultron ascended to a previously unattainable level of consciousness. He became aware of another. He became aware of the...
I see you.
That I hope this is addressed the next What If episode.
Yes.
Uatu's like, it's my fault. I couldn't help monologue.
I get really into the stories. I'm sorry. I didn't realize that it was echoing my exact experience in the moment.
It's almost equivalent to that sitcom joke of when people are in a court case and the person typing is typing every single little tiny word that is displayed, and the character gets really annoyed with them. Like, why are you typing? Stop typing!
Stop typing! Stop typing! This moment of realization is odd because, yeah, again, we saw a separate moment of the Watcher first seeing Ultron Infinity at the end of the Party Thor episode. So when did the Watcher first recognize Ultron as a multiversal threat? Then or now? Well, the Watcher does say here,
I have seen everything that has ever happened, ever will happen, ever could happen, and yet, what the hell is this?
Now, yes, there are multiple Watchers in existence, but I think this one voiced by Jeffrey Wright is just the same Watcher that we saw at the end of episode 7. And I think this is his way of describing how he is just a multiversal being with his perception divided across an array of moments in history. Kind of like He Who Remains, he's able to see the past, present, and future all at once. And we have one set of his eyes reacting to Ultron crashing Party Thor, and another set of his eyes reacting to Ultron here. And that only when Ultron responds to him behind that prism wall, despite him trying to wipe the blinds closed, does he finally see him as an existential threat to his script.
Actually is a pretty solid point. But let me add on. Maybe he's just Quentin Tarantinoing it.
That's right. Somebody poisoned the cafe.
Teasing what's to come.
Yeah, he likes the
he's
drama.
A storyteller. He's trying to make it interesting for who's listening.
See, the multiverse is playing out all at the same time, everything that could happen, but hey, man, these are the specific words I chose to tell the audience.
What's my Goodfellas opening? Now, how did we get here?
This is my 100,000,009th draft of these stories, and I think they're pretty good.
We need an opening sting.
And the heartbreaking aspect to the story that the Watcher at the beginning of the episode is talking about is is literally Ultron breaking the heart of his Prism multiverse. That's why this story breaks his heart more than the others. Also notice how much the Watcher blinks here. That was a little detail I pointed out last week as just a bit of evidence of Uatu's human-like fallibility. And now he blinks like crazy as if trying to wake up from a dream.
So much blinking.
Hunger like that were to be unleashed upon the multiverse. Even I cannot imagine the horrors that might follow.
Yeah, the hunger is also the name given to the zombie virus in the Marvel Zombies comics, a virus that spreads across universes in the pages of the comics, unlike in the show. So I'm wondering if this show could actually follow through on what the virus is in the comics, and that the Watcher could try to use that multiversal hunger to neutralize this multiversal hunger.
Ooh,
Interesting.
that's a good idea.
But if that happens, then that zombie Thanos can get his revenge.
That's right, he can. He can laser Ultron Infinity in it.
He's got all the stones too.
But my question about that would be, what are they gonna eat? Because he's a robot, and his robots are also robots. They're just metal.
I don't think it's gonna come back. Maybe
probably
we'll see.
I mean, there's got to be at least another zombie somewhere.
Clint and Natasha seek a Zola file in a KGB archives warehouse that Clint compares to the final shot of Raiders of the Lost Ark, and the camera tilts up in both versions of the shot. He also later references Star Wars.
The Death Star plans are not in the main computer.
And Natasha says,
Hard copies are harder to steal, easier to destroy. But code is slippery, and it never dies.
the lesson they learned from Ultron, of course, but also one that they will apply to Zola, perhaps foretelling how they might not be able to kill Ultron permanently, but rather they have to find a way to contain him. Natasha finds the shield of the Red Guardian, Alexei Shostakov from Black Widow. He did not have that shield in the Black Widow film, but his action figure did. In Arnim Zola's file box, there are some other names in Cyrillic letters. I didn't take the time to translate these. Oh wait, of course I did. They seem to be the names of a bunch of artists who worked on the What If series. There's Paul Lasaine, he's the What If production designer. Then Molly Sotak and Fran Portillo, they're design coordinators for Marvel Studios. Then Cynthia Halley and Peter Bertucci, those are Marvel Studios artists. And then in the later shot, as Natasha thumbs through these, you can see Joshua Bramley, he's the What If asset supervisor. And then Sean something, and then El Grasso, and then Zachary, split up into two words, and then May Fam, maybe My Family. I'm just assuming all these are crew or friends and family. These are just the ones that I spotted.
How dare you become lazy and not figure out exactly what every one of them does, and also provide us with pictures of them.
Yeah, you should be making calls to their families, getting details on their upbringing.
Laziness.
Dude.
At maximum level there, Eric Voss.
I was gonna remember this for that thing about Terminator, but now I'm gonna remember it for your utter laziness.
Shortcomings. No, I appreciate that.
I didn't actually mean it. Please, Voss. I'm sorry,
Joke
Voss.
is
I'm
that
sorry, Voss.
you did way more work than everyone else.
The Watcher begs using the same exact words that Tony Stark did, begging for his life.
You don't have to do this.
Which probably gives Ultron even more resolve to bring peace to all of existence by silencing it.
I have a question. If the Infinity Stones essentially become rendered obsolete if you throw them into the TVA, couldn't the Watcher, because I get where people were getting at with that point, but couldn't the Watcher somehow guide him to just sort of be in like the TVA sphere? Obviously he dominates off of more than just the Infinity Stones. What's really aiding him now in his quest is the Infinity Stones.
Yeah, and I mean, I already thought they were only supposed to work really well in their own universe of origin, so I'm like, how's he gonna do this when every single other universe? I mean, he does get the drop on the Watcher, so I could see how it's like, well, he doesn't have time to like get him over and maneuver him over there, but yeah, you'd think that he could just kind of find a doorway there and, you know, neutralize the entire situation.
If he's going out there and breaking the fourth wall and destroying like these timelines and multiverses, wouldn't the TVA have cause to intervene? Maybe go back and prevent some of this from happening?
You would think so. You would think that like Age of Ultron would be always wiped from the timeline forever, just for the potentiality of this outcome.
I don't know. What do we know? You guys tell us. Tell us why we're wrong.
Natasha and Clint find the same Siberian Hydra base from Captain America's Civil War, but here the tanks that contain the other Winter Soldier assassins are now all empty, meaning Hydra might have deployed them to try to stop Ultron, and obviously failed. The Arnim Zola algorithm comes back on this computer terminal.
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Romanov, Natalia Alyanovna, Barton Clinton Francis.
Of course, similar to how he greeted Steve and Natasha at Camp Lehigh in Captain America Winter Soldier, except now he calls them Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. R.I.P. So, in addition to Zola's AI presence living on in Camp Lehigh, secretly corrupting S.H.I.E.L.D. as Hydra, Zola was also present as a backup in the same place that Tony Stark realized Bucky killed his parents, and Cap knew about it, leading to their fight. Makes me wonder how maybe in the main MCU, Zola could have been a silent partner to Zemo and helped supply him that footage as a way to hunt the Avengers from the grave of Hydra and giving one last FU to Captain Rogers.
That's President Rogers to you.
I think all that happened was they added it into the What If show, and at the time, the writers of Civil War did not know about Zola being in the base.
But now it's gonna look like it was the plan all along. That's what this show is the best for.
Marvel team could look at each other like, can we say? Does it negate it? No. It was a plan all along. A little boy in Iron Man 2 was definitely Spider-Man.
It's definitely Peter Parker, 100%.
Either way, folks, Zola lives. Now, they try to use Zola to infiltrate Ultron's code via his Sentry hive mind, the same way that he infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D., and Clint does this by downloading him in one of his arrows, using that same awesome USB drive arrow that Clint used in the first Avengers film, and he plugs it into an Ultron Sentry with some cool color coding here, Zola's AI green replacing the Ultron red. Go light and stop light. They climb the same silo that Stark chased Cap and Bucky up in Civil War. We see various alternate functions of Clint's arrows, like laser netting, a force field barrier, and one that just has a powerful boom boom, which might be what Clint is referring to with Kate Bishop in the upcoming Hawkeye.
Love the way they animate the explosions.
I want to see Hawkeye versus Predator.
Yeah. Oh, give us that one.
Mirror of Natasha's death in Endgame, Clint forces her to let him go. Actually, in the first Avengers film, Clint dove and turned back upwards mid-air to fire arrows up, but here he turns mid-air downward to face certain death. I love this shot of him following slow motion of the swarm of Sentries. Beautiful composition. Notice how they tilt the whole silo at an angle to make Clint's drop look like a deliberate strike. And then they widen out the silo way larger than it actually is in order to heighten the contrast of the one versus the many to give it all a more epic scale. Natasha lands from the explosion in the stove, making the pose that Yelena made fun of her for in Black Widow. Meanwhile, the Watcher and Ultron duel, and it rules! Uatu withstands a double blast of the Reality Stone and the Time Stone, though note that in this domain, which might be Uatu's version of the mirror dimension based on how it looks, Ultron doesn't use the practical functions of the Time Stone or the Reality Stone, like rewinding the flow of time or like turning Uatu's robes into beetles. They're simply just big energy blasts. And that might be a limitation of the stones outside of any one reality. Like, you still remain an all-powerful Nexus god, but the specific unique functions of the stones themselves might not be exactly usable here. Now, the Watcher defends himself.
I swore an oath. I cannot exert my will in the natural order of things. I cannot intervene.
To whom did the Watcher swear this oath? In the comics, Uatu is one of many Watchers, the one assigned to our universe, and we know others exist in the MCU from the Guardians Volume 2 scene, but we may have to see Uatu answer to his fellow Watchers for his interference. Uatu blocks Ultron's Kirby crackles with a shield of glowing lines that look like celestial design, like the cosmic energy used by the Eternals. The Watchers and the Celestials have an antagonistic relationship in the comics over whether or not to interfere. Watchers swear not to, Celestials can't help monkeying with the monkeys. But notice how Uatu suits up in this combat armor, kind of like the Watcher Aaron the Renegade from the comics, but the fact that Watchers have armored forms, just like the Celestials have these armored forms, might be a clue that these two entities might have been at war with each other in eons past.
I think there's a really great, boring-ass Star Wars Episode 1 political prequel movie to make.
I want it.
The Celestials
I want it.
Watchers.
Just them in one room.
Talking and debating.
Debating about whether or not to interfere. And then by the time they make a decision, it's much too late.
Yeah. I just want to see them debating while the audience is itching to. Can you just cut to what they're talking about?
See some cool shit already, please. 12 angry Celestials.
Ultron tackles the Watcher through these different worlds. We see this pyramid planet, then an ice planet, then this interesting molten lava planet. Actually looks a lot like Mustafar from Star Wars. There is a castle in the background that looks like Vader's fortress. And come
damn! He's right.
Similar to the
They own
Lucasfilm
Lucasfilm
from
too.
Star Wars, so the animators might have worked in some Star Wars nods here. And then another ice planet, and then this rock planet with floating columns that a gargantuan Ultron bites down on, looming even larger than the whole galaxy, clearly a nod to Galactus, devourer of worlds, an entity that we have been pining to see in the MCU. I think it's the show's way of striking fear and awe of Ultron Infinity as a Galactus-sized threat. But even Galactus doesn't consume celestial bodies out of spite like this. He's driven by a custodial drive to Marie Kondo, the universe of dying dysfunctional planets. Then the Watcher crashes into Times Square with onlookers, including that pineapple shirt guy from Vegas in episode 7.
Oh, it's the same guy.
For Olympia the musical, as we saw in Times Square in episode 3, but nothing yet about Rogers the musical, because I guess here Steve Rogers is taking the oath of office to become the US president, something that does happen in the Ultimates comics. But perhaps in this universe, Steve Rogers only ran to prevent candidate Loki from becoming president. And that could be how that Loki got pruned to the void. Ultron's punch turns Times Square into Wakanda, and then to a medieval castle, and then to the Skrull Society. This could be their throne world of Tarnax 4, and then ending on another frozen planet, bringing Uatu full circle with his snowy beginnings this episode. Notice how as Ultron tries to crack the Watcher's head like an egg, steam sizzles off of it in the cold air. And this is also the way Captain Marvel tried to implode Ultron's head on Xandar, just showing how with every fight, Ultron is learning a new way to kill someone.
I just gotta say, isn't Uatu like an adorable, like little baby?
It's just a baby head,
like
giant baby head, on a regular buff guy body.
He's so adorable.
I just want to cuddle him.
So about him just seems so cute.
But the Watcher is able to break free and retreats to his purple sphere, where back in episode 4, the Watcher left Strange supreme. This time the framing is reversed from their first encounter. Uatu now looks over his shoulder to see Strange creeping up behind him, with all of his monstrous entities still part of him. But of course, Uatu has come here because Strange is the one other Nexus level being he might know of who might be able to help him fight Ultron.
Are you ready to break your oath?
Yeah, interesting to hear Strange talk this way as a doctor bound by his own Hippocratic oath to do no harm. But that doesn't apply to robots, I bet. The Watcher changes his tune.
I see now. I need your help.
And the shape has changed.
Yeah, notice how the music shifts here from a dramatic orchestral swell and choir shrieks to a simple acoustic guitar melody over the credits. It was the music of Doctor Strange trying to work past his absolute point in episode 4 and now reflecting this new cooperation between the two. I think we can expect their solution to be one part using Zola's algorithm to de-link Ultron from his hive mind, one part using the Hunger Virus and another Infinity Stone armed threat, and ultimately, since Ultron remains a slippery code impossible to eradicate fully, trapping him the way Strange Supreme was trapped, perhaps by breaking the multiverse in such a way to leave it impossible to navigate. Maybe what that opening imagery of every episode showing spiraling, broken shards has been foretelling us this whole time. And of course, I think this series is going to set up the MCU with a broken, chaotic multiverse ahead of titles like Spider-Man No Way Home and Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness.
And Hawkeye!
Rockstars by checking out our merch options at rockstarsmerch.com. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at EAVoss. Follow and subscribe to New Rockstars. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for being here. You rock stars. You're the best. You are the best. You are thebomb.com.
The best.
EA Voss, you are the ultimate boss. Man, that was epic.
That was beautiful.
Epic. Terminator 2, Carol Danvers. I blame Brie Larson just because.
She improv that line.
Yep. She's like, hey, I know I'm not doing the voice. Let me throw a line your way.
Let me pitch you something, guys. I'm in the room.
Thanks for being here. See you guys soon.